everything's such a nightmare to deal with? You people ever think about that? Why everything is always such an immaculate pain in the ass no matter what you're trying to do? Just every fucking little thing you do winds up being a complete and utter pain in the fucking ass. I mean, 9 times out of 10 here, people. Complete pain in the ass. All right. Well, I hope to fucking God we got all the footage we need, because otherwise I'm going to leave some stuff out. I'm going to forget, as I'm wont to do. I don't know what the proper pronunciation of that one is. Okay, well, we're going to do the most we can here. All right. And frankly, that's all any of you out there deserve, is the best we can. Not perfection, but the best we can. Okay, so let's begin. A little bit of backstory here. So Star Wars Republic Commando is an Xbox exclusive game. And growing up as a Star Wars fan and having played most of the reputable Star Wars games, I always wanted to play this. I always wanted to play this game because it belonged to the generation of Star Wars games that I really liked, you know. And then came like Force Unleashed or something like that, and that really wasn't my style. And after that came all the remastered Battlefront games, which I did not care for. This was one of the few that belonged to the generation of Star Wars games that I was interested in. You had this. You had the original Battlefront games. You had a couple racing games. You had a couple flying games. And what else did you have? Jesus Christ. I'm leaving something out. But there was and you had Star Wars Bounty Hunter. That's the big one. But you had some really in-depth, high-quality, interesting, and atmospheric Star Wars video games. Sci-fi video games. You know, I think first and foremost, these were genre-based games, which I really liked. They existed in a specific universe. They were very faithful to that. And they really, really wanted to make you feel like you were part of that world, you know. And that's exciting because it carries across all of the games, especially the ones that were created in this particular time frame. You know, Mo, would you get out of the way, please? Bounty Hunter, Republic Commandos, Battlefronts 1 and 2 were all made during that. I think the second movie was about to come out when these games came out, or, you know, they came out sort of in conjunction. So you were playing a couple of side stories in the universe that the movie itself was presenting on the big screen. You know, so you had a lot of engagement with this particular universe. You saw the movie, you played the games, it was all tied together in a really interesting way, in a way that really expands on the story that you see in the movies, you know. The stories are always super concurrent and tied in and really intricately knotted throughout the movie itself, which I not only do I appreciate, but I'm pretty impressed by. You know, there's really no kinks in it. And not only that, but the story itself is approached with the same level of austerity, you know, where it's not real up in your face, but... I can't even get into it. I'm pretty bad at talking about movies at the moment, so I couldn't describe it to you. But basically what I'm going to say is that it's not bullshit. You know, you're playing it, you're in it. You're watching it, you're in it. I don't think there's any bullshit. I don't think there's anything ingenuous. And that excites me. When people are doing something that they clearly believe in, that excites me above all else. And these games and these movies are things that when you watch them, you think to yourself, wow, people really believed in this. Believe it! put forth a lot of effort, and that's pretty cool. Anyway, I never had an Xbox growing up, so I was only left with the PS2 friendly additions to this particular universe, right? And I always wanted to play this one. And in fact, I remember one night when I was really young watching a friend play this on his TV in the basement. One of the few friends I had whose whose dad was out of the picture enough for him to be allowed to play rated M games. You know exactly who I'm talking about. This was the kid who was always playing like State of Emergency, Grand Theft Auto, from like age 4 onwards, you know. And lo and behold, I had to block this kid on Facebook like 7 years ago for being just disgustingly racist. And he was like 7 years ahead of the Trump train too. So that's all the proof I need about video games warping young kids' minds. You know, I didn't grow up with rated M games, and look at me. I'm a proper young gentleman. Well, meanwhile, you know, he's probably constructing bombs somewhere. Anywho, played it at his house, and I remember thinking to myself, like, whoa, this is a fucking rated M game. You know, it was real dark. It's tense. It's kind of gloomy. There's like a night vision option, you know, which always means it's mature, right? And so I always wanted to play it, but I didn't have an Xbox, and now I'm borrowing somebody's Xbox 360. I think, before I even get into the game, I think I'm going to try to get an actual Xbox because it runs like fucking horse shit on this system. And truthfully, I don't know if it's the system or the game, but I'm willing to shell out a couple bucks to test it out, because if it runs at a full 60 frames per second on the Xbox or whatever it's supposed to be at, I will gladly pay any amount of money to get rid of the fucking stuttering that's occurring on this Xbox 360. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's really distracting too. So I'm hoping if I can get an original system before the fucking city shuts down entirely, I'll be able to play this the way it was meant to be played. And I don't mind replaying certain things. Side note here, I just mentioned the city. So I've been playing this all night. Went out to get a pack of cigarettes, you know, full disclosure. Going out to get a pack of Marlboro Lights, if I could manage. And I went out, it's like 12 a.m., on a Thursday, right? Not an unusual hour of the night to be out and about in New York City. No one, and I'm not exaggerating, no one was outside. All of the delis were closed. All of the restaurants were closed. I got fucking terrified. I've never seen the city so empty. And, you know, I just moved to, like, way upper Manhattan from Brooklyn. And, of course, you know, from where I am in Brooklyn, the quarantine ended like 2 weeks into quarantine. You know, it's been a party there ever since. And there's always people out. There's always something going on. And there's no one outside here. It's really, really throwing me for a loop. It's crazy. Okay, anyway. I just wanted to bring that up because I haven't had a cigarette. Which really sucks. Really wanted one tonight. Anyway, I'm playing the game, finally. The Xbox 360, not the best. I've been playing it, you know. Past 3 nights I've been playing this game. And I'm trying to figure it out, right? You know, it's a squad-based game. You're the main guy, obviously. You know, you have a gun, you got a pistol. You know, it's pretty standard first-person shooter shit, right? But you're in control of 3 other people. In that you could point at certain objects and say, hey, go crouch behind there and snipe. Hey, go plant a bomb on that thing. You know, everybody form up. Everybody go attack. Stay where you are. Go get some health. That kind of thing. You have a fair amount of control over these 3 other guys that you're going through these environments with. And up until tonight, I hadn't really been thinking about them. And I had been approaching the game as I would any other first-person shooter, right? And I'm like, wow, this is kind of hard, you know. These weapons kind of suck. The combat doesn't feel that great, kind of blows. And I keep dying, you know. And before you fuckers out there start saying, well, Jack, of course you're dying. You suck at video games, bro. You've always sucked at video games. What I got to say to you is this. There's a reason I was dying. And it wasn't because I was bad. You want to comment? You want to leave that kind of negativity on my page? Take a hike. Get the fuck out of here. There was a reason I died so many times. And I only realized it tonight, which is they're fucking serious about this squad-based bullshit. I'm going to tell you right now. They're serious about it. You know, this isn't just because I was thinking yesterday, I'm like, okay, this would be better if I didn't have to command these guys. You know, this is basically Halo 1 with a couple of other guys that you have to command around. Shittier combat. You know, Halo 1, worse, Star Wars presentation, right? But then tonight I realized, no, you know, Jack, this isn't a standard first-person shooter. You know, just because it doesn't feel like one, just because it doesn't function as one, does not mean that it was ever meant to be one, right? I had to get that out of my head, and once I did, I realized, there's a reason that I keep dying. It's because I'm trying to take on all these fucking things alone, rather than strategically plotting out how best my team, the four of us, with me in command, can operate, can take out these obstacles, can attack and approach these obstacles. And then I started slowing down a little bit. You know, it takes a really long... First of all, it takes a long time to kill all these people, right? It takes a really long time to kill the droids. But then, once you start going at the game's pace, you realize, okay, this is like a slower combat game. You know, this is almost... And I think it's a little bit more atmospheric for this reason. This is almost like survival horror combat in a first-person shooter. Now, I haven't played Resident Evil, any of the new Resident Evils, right? I haven't played Dead Space. Those are two shooter horror games. I have not played any shooter horror games, but I imagine that they probably are operating within the same kind of circle that this game is. Presumably to a much more extreme degree. But nonetheless, this game is doing something really interesting in that the combat is slow. They're always slowly pushing forward, and they fucking pack a wallop. You know, you don't want to die, and it's very easy to die. It's easy for your team to die. So the best way to take care of people while minimizing casualties is directing your guys where to go, taking it one target at a time. You know, and it's really interesting for that reason. I think it's an interesting kind of twist on the first person shooter in that you're now a member of a squad and you're not that much powerful than the other guys in your squad. You know, you're not like a super tough leader who's got a couple of lackeys. You know, you really need to take care of these guys because some of them, they're stronger than you in a lot of different regards, you know, in terms of what they can damage they can wield, that kind of thing. And so you really can't forget about them, which totally flips the way you approach the game. You know, suddenly everything, that pace slows way down. Suddenly you're going room by room, combing it for combat pace possibilities, basically, you know. Okay, I see there's a ledge over there. He can snipe behind that thing. There's another area over here that the guy, you know, with the artillery or whatever can set up, his bombs or something like that. You know, you start going about things slowly. You know, it's not just run and gun, which is really fucking interesting. This particular level, the level I'm going to talk about is the one that really cemented in my mind what this game was going for. I think the past couple have been really, really reinforcing the combat for the most part, but this is the one. And I think the one before it I think I was probably still too new to the combat to really get into the atmosphere of it. But this level, once I finally figured out how to play the game and what it was doing, I could finally take a bit of a breather and just start soaking in the story, baby. And this is creepy. It's really creepy. Like, this is a mature game. Not in terms of subject matter particularly, but in terms of its presentation, right? So at this point in the mission, and the mission, of course, is like 4 or 5 levels long. At this point, at this level, you're deep inside of a droid factory, right? On like an alien planet. And the aliens who, you know, the idea is that there's a native race of people who live here who have been bought out by the Empire or whatever. The Empire have given them a couple of dollars. They're like, hey, we're going to build these droid factories underground on your planet. We're going to make a big army taking over the universe. And guess what? We're giving you a big old piece of the pie. You know, so it's that kind of setup, which basically means that you have creepy bug-like creatures flying at you, and you have creepy droids shooting at you. And the two worlds, as we're about to see for really the first time, are about to collide. The whole time you're on the crust of the planet, you see these gross insect-looking things, and that's about it. Alien planet looks like Mars, right? But then you descend through all these pipes and channels into the droid factory, and that's when the story really begins to take place. You're going through this factory, you got to blow it up, obviously, right? So you blow it up, and now you guys are trying to make your escape, but you're going through the areas where all the racks of droids are. You know, this droid army is stored in racks, put into massive boxes and shipped off in these coffin-like things off the battle. You know, very hands-off process. It's like Amazon, right? It's like, this is what the future's going to look like. No people, nothing whatsoever, floating boxes. That's all we need. And so it has a really spooky sci-fi vibe for that reason. You know, lights are flashing, shit has been destroyed, and all the while you got these creepy droids just hanging there, you know, lurking off into the corner. You have no idea what's going to happen. And then now you begin, because this is the first time, and you're alone during this mission. You know, your sidekicks are off doing their own thing, which I'm going to come back to when I talk about what I think multiplayer should be. But your sidekicks are off, everybody's like separated, and you're all going to meet back at a central spot. So this is the first time in the game that you're alone, the first time that there's not really non-stop enemies coming at you, and it's the first time you've got a little bit of breathing room to slow down and just take a look around, to just sort of absorb the atmosphere and the story. You head into this immaculately sort of glossy, chrome-looking room, right? Real interesting architecture. And you got two things going on here. One, this is like OG Xbox graphics 101, right? You saw it in Halo. You know what I'm talking about. There's always this weird purplish sheen to everything. And that's, I'm sure somebody has talked about this before, but that's part of it, right? The graphics on the Xbox are really like polygonal and computery. You know, you're playing this game and they're really like graphic-y, right? I don't know if that makes any sense. But you're playing a computer game. You have this idea that you're playing a computer game due to the graphics, right? So not only that, but then you have, of course, this mirror-like glistening texture that, again, is something that you see only on the Xbox in terms of that generation of games. You think of any Xbox game, think of the water graphics. The water is, like, immaculate, right? It's really interesting, looks pretty real compared to anything on the PS2 or the GameCube. You know, the water graphics on those systems looks like shit. You know, there's no like real-time lighting engine, I guess is what I'm saying, in either of those systems. And here, well, there is. But here, the lighting engine is much more sophisticated, I think. And you start seeing, I believe, what video games would eventually end up transitioning into, right? So it looks amazing. And then on a story level, you're in the droid part of this factory that you're infiltrating, right? You've been on the crust, you saw the gross alien things, you're on Mars. You descend into the bowels of this planet, and suddenly, platinum, chrome. You have this idea of like, the droids and the pristine quality, and the pristine quality of their very nature, right, by being robots. No touch of grease or rock or rubble or any sort of human involvement. You get a real sense of threat, basically. It's the classic thing. Humans are scrappy and resourceful, and robots are pristine, perfect, but they're fucking robots, right? They don't have heart, and you really get a sense of that here. Similar to how in Halo you go onto the alien ship. It's all purple. It's all weird. They have a really great art direction for the enemies, for the good guys. And that's something that you see a lot on the Xbox. Now, I'm not saying that it's an Xbox-specific thing, but, I think you'd be hard-pressed to argue with me that the Xbox versus those other two systems didn't have much more mature, like, space shooter-type games. Like in the tradition of Doom and whatever the other fucking one was, like Forsaken, that kind of shit. I feel like this is a pretty solid sci-fi shooter game. Of course, there's a bit of a twist, but there you go. Anywhoosie, back to the story. Now, you're walking through this space. It's abandoned, and you see these big pods, right? They're going through windows. They're on the move. They're dangling there, broken. You have no idea what they are, but every time you take a look out a window, you take a break away from the action, you see them, right? And it's like, what the fuck is... On one hand, story element, what the fuck are these things? Are they bombs? You shoot at them a couple times. Nothing happens. You look down a corridor, you see a couple that are broken, you see them moving across. It's noticeable. These are a noticeable part of the level design that you can't necessarily put off as something that's unimportant. And so, naturally, your mind starts to wonder, like, what are these things? Why are they broken? Why aren't they moving? Whatever. On the other hand, of course, it's a really easy way to shoehorn some beautiful looking graphics in here. The way these things are lit changes based on the positions in the hall. It's just a really easy, simple, sculptural kind of medium that kind of catches the light that's running on the system, running through this game. It's a sculptural kind of thing used to capture light in a very real way. You're wondering what the fuck it is. You turn a corner, you're suddenly swarmed by guys. They're attacking you, they're shooting you, and then you notice, oh my god, they're coming out of the fucking thing that's been floating around. They're marching out of like this downed vessel, basically, and then you get a real sense of like horror, right? You're like, oh my god, I'm in the belly of. It's almost kind of Metroidy, in that you're in the bowels of this planet, and there's an insect-like life force there. That's almost breeding. That's almost too. There's almost too many of them, right? You see, you see the open pod on the ground, and there's like fucking 10 soldiers that march their way out of it. And God, how many fucking pods have you seen floating around? Like dozens and dozens and dozens. You get a real sense of the number, the magnitude of these bad guys who are here. And just the sense of being in territory that you've got to get the fuck out of. Coupled with the quiet, coupled with, Jesus Christ, looking across these big wide openings and seeing these coffin-like boxes, these sarcophagus-looking things floating through space without a person there guiding them. you know, now is when you get a real good, firm sense of isolation, when they finally allow you to, you know. And it's pretty exciting. This level's really exciting. Of course, it's very hard. I had to stop because I got to the point where I really just need to approach it on a different day. It's too much. But truly, I'm blown away by this level particularly. I mean, this is insane. Totally beautiful. And on the CRT, sitting in the total dark about 3 feet away from this big-ass presentation of the game with the sound all the way up. Man, it's really, really awesome. And so this was a great reminder that, like, hey, yeah, you can't just approach games as what you assume they are. You know, you can't just approach things based on whatever genre it is, whatever it's supposed to be. They're totally unique. They're really, really unique. And it's a good lesson for video games. I think it's a good lesson for movies, for books, and for everything.
Well, I used to smile when I was a pup, sailing down the Nile in a china cup with a recipe.
Jesus Christ, he's mad. The first half of this video I made when I first started playing the game, when I was real excited about it. And now I'm playing, or now the rest of the video, Jesus Christ, I'm tired, is after I've beaten the game. I want to say right off the bat, the ending is probably the worst ending I've ever seen in a game. And I'm not saying, like, I don't agree with, like, the direction they took or something like that. Mo, be careful! Jesus. But the game just ends. It just stops, basically. There's a mission where, because the whole thing is you're playing with 3 other guys. I've been over this. Mo, would you get down, please? Playing with 3 other guys, and then in the very last level, you gotta leave one of them on the planet that you're escaping. And all your buddies are like, no, this is bullshit, we gotta go after him. And the level cuts, and then it loads like what I assumed was a new level where you're in the big drop ship or whatever, and they're talking, and Yoda pops up. He's like, hey, you guys got to go back down into the fight. And I'm like, all right, cool. This will be a fun chapter, having to deal with the missing friend or whatever. And then the second that little cutscene ends, there's like the worst. I don't know what year this game came out. 2005 maybe, but the absolute worst fucking like emo song comes on, like a hard song made by a lot of wimpy dudes. And then the credits start rolling, and I was like, it's not over. What are you fucking talking about? It was just, there was no ending to it, which sucked. Because the story itself is pretty good, actually. As much as they have a story to begin with. I see how they, like, maybe why they would have ended it the way they did, because it could have just continued on and on and on. But I think one thing that they fucked up on was basically saving the best for first. The entire, like, first half of the game is superb. It's just fucking sick as hell. All the levels are really, really cool. It's really exciting. There's a lot of great variety. And then the second half is like, it's the same as the first half. No surprises there, but it's just way more boring. The levels kind of suck, you know, and they're just, it's just needlessly difficult. It's not even difficult, it's just like you just really become aware of how hard you have to just grind to get through everything. So in my opinion, they should have just gone, like, they literally could have gone in the reverse order leading up to the big Geonosis fight from the movie. They started with that. They should have just ended with that. But I guess technically it, like, bridges the gap between the second and third movies, which makes sense. Yeah, but it's not a good game well, it's a good game. It's definitely like not an all-time great game, you know. It's like a solid 6 out of 10 game. Why do I say that? Because the gameplay ain't fun. It's really fluid. It feels good to run around. Like the Foley design, like when you're running around and the sounds you make and the footsteps, and is really fucking good. It was noticeable how like how much effort they put into it. You know, when you're walking around, you're like clone troopers, so you're wearing this white plastic armor, and you're walking around, and I guess the sound they used was like a horse saddle or something, and they like slapped it a little bit, and it's just like a really textural sounding game, which is pretty cool. And the sound design's pretty good as well, in terms of like the spaces you're in. It's no fucking Metroid Prime, but it's still pretty cool. My problem is that the combat sucks. You know, it's supposed to be squad-based combat. You tell your guy, all right, go fucking shoot that thing, go blow that thing up. And your squad mates are funny, you know. They're like the voice clips are really, they're pretty good, you know. There was one, and like all the characters are pretty well developed, right? There was like a moment the other night where you're walking through something, and one of your buddies is like, something's strange, you know. And the ditzy one, I guess, goes, yeah, I find a lot of things strange. And I thought that was really funny. There's like a lot of pretty funny back and forth things that happen. Of course, oftentimes, it's just an endless repeat of the same ones, which isn't too bad. Because what are you doing? The characters are pretty good. I think I liked that a lot. That element was cool. But yeah, for what it is, it just ain't very good. The squad-based combat is not very well put together. And I'm not saying that this is like a sign of its age or anything. It didn't age poorly. It just wasn't good to begin with, you know. The combat is totally unresponsive. Doesn't feel like you're blowing anything up. When you get your boys to attack something, it works for the most part, but you know, if you don't direct them to shoot something, they're just going to stand there in front of the thing like an inch away from its face, shooting it in the head as the thing is blowing missiles into your guy's gut, which is a big fucking problem. And they don't like duck behind anything really. They'll just kind of stand there and get shot in the face a million times. So it's a little bit simplistic in that regard. You know, the AI could have been like so much better. Enemy AI, pretty standard, I guess. My problem with the game is that it consists of two things gameplay-wise, and that is shooting shit and then running up to a console and holding down the X button while the little loading circle completes its course, right? It's like, you gotta go hack a terminal. That requires either you standing there and holding the X button for 10 to 60 seconds, or you telling one of your boys to head over there and hold their X button for 10 to 60 seconds. And the combat is the exact same thing. When you're shooting, you're just holding the button for anywhere between 10 to 60 seconds, and it goes a little bit quicker when you get all your boys to hold their buttons on the guy. You see what I mean? The combat is a little bit stupid in that regard. And the only way to actually have fun with it is just spam grenades. Spam grenades, spam the grenade launcher, pick up all the drops, go back to other rooms and pick up drops that you've already gotten before. It's the only way to like have a good time in the game, because the combat is so lackluster. And that's the problem I run into with every fucking Star Wars game from like mid-90s on, maybe. There are all these like Doom clone, like the original ones, like Jedi Knight or whatever, like the old Jedi Knight or Jedi Power or whatever, where you play like Kyle or something like that. The whole game is you running through corridors and shooting shit. Although in that game it felt pretty good. Running through corridors and shooting shit, and that's about it. And every successive game minus like the flying games, minus whatever other like racing games or something, every other shooter that they came out with aside from Battlefront is the same thing. It's you running and shooting and running and shooting, and none of them feel very good because the people making these games are fucking technicians. They're technical wizards, and they're not game developers. They're not like anyone. They're because it's so clear where their preoccupations lie. It's with the graphical fidelity, the sound quality, and the worlds. You can't take you can't take that away from them. The worlds are super well realized. Like I was saying, the Foley's incredible, which just sucks you in. So playing these games is a real like cerebral experience, I would say. You get really caught up in the worlds, which is great. But by the end of the game, you're just so bored with it. And if the levels don't progressively get better, you kind of ask yourself, then what's the point? Because in this game, the levels just like progressively got worse. And I even went to replay some of the earlier ones because I'm like, well, maybe I was just excited by the game and they're actually not that great. And I just kind of got strung out and a little bit tired of it by the end. But the fucking levels that I replayed, I'm like, oh, these are fucking cool as hell, super well realized. There is a story being delivered to you via the gameplay, and then they just kind of cut that out at a certain point. You know, you're never, like after the halfway point, you don't learn anything new. Like in the beginning, you're like, when you see the big droid pod that I was talking about earlier, like droids coming out of it, you learned what that thing was. And then for the rest of the game, you just see a fuck ton of droid pods, and that's it. You know, they don't introduce new shit like that ever. You don't see something and think, what the fuck is that? And then a couple of minutes later, have it revealed to you what it is. They don't do that. They like kind of like end with, they just stop being clever about it. And the biggest proof of that is how the game fucking ends. The beginning of the game where you're like born, you're literally born at the beginning of the game, is so fucking sick. The way it like introduces you to the story, the way, and the story is fucking fantastic. You know, the way it goes by chapters or whatever, it'll skip ahead like several months or like a year or so and catch you up to where everything is at. It's really fucking cool how it works its way to a certain point, and then there's just no ending. They just continue pumping you through these levels, and then that's it. There's like no final boss. There's no final boss. You're fighting the same enemies the whole time. Remember in the ghost ship? In the ghost ship, there's these creepy scavenger droids that are kind of zipping around like bugs, right? And I'm like, that's a cool enemy. Really nice touch. Having creepy scavenger things inside this empty, decaying ship. And then you're in the fucking like the trees, you're in the Wookiee sanctuary or whatever, and the fucking scavenger droids are there. It's like, what? No, they're not there. They were on the ship. Why are they here suddenly? And it's because they just started recycling crap. The only thing I liked about like the Wookiee sanctuary, and I guess this is sort of something I think is interesting about maybe sci-fi in general, is that I feel like, let's say Disney had decided what the Wookiee sanctuary would be like in this game, they definitely would have made it like primitive, you know? But in this game, I like it because the Wookiee sanctuary is like, it's all made of wood and shit like that, but it's not primitive. Like there's still like highly technical things, and there's like, Jesus Christ, I don't know what the word for it is, but hovering news going by and shit like that, like you'd see in like a metropolitan city. And I thought that was kind of a nice touch. But yeah, it ended up getting really boring. That said, even though it's a 6.5 game on its own, as one game of many in the library of original Xbox games, it was so fucking cool. I mean, this is a must-play Xbox title, in my opinion. I mean, it's just like, it really, I would imagine, pushes the system to its limits. You know, it's such a beautiful looking game. It's just fucking crazy how good this game looks. So as part of the Xbox library, I couldn't recommend it more. Like, if you have an Xbox or fucking 360 or you like the Xbox original games, you owe it to yourself to play this game. It might not be the best game, but it's certainly like 100% worth your time. Because there's a lot of fucking cool stuff. I really like it. It's a short game. I will definitely replay it at a certain point. Not anytime soon. I don't think there's like... And I've already basically replayed it. I've been replaying all the older levels. What's weird, though, is that I played some of it on the 360. And the 360 has updated textures, which I wasn't expecting, and I was a little bit disappointed to find out because I really liked the updated 360 textures. And it's mainly just that real glossy sheen that they coated some of the levels with. Ultimately, I'm glad I played on the original hardware. You know, I like playing on the original hardware. Anyone who, like, denies the importance of that can go fuck themselves. There's something sacred about playing a game on the original hardware. And I know there's people like, well, just fucking emulate it. It's free and it looks better. I don't care. I don't care. There's something sacred about playing it on the actual fucking thing. There's something a little bit more soulful about it. So I'm glad I played it on the original console, but I also thought that it looked really cool on the 360. So am I going to replay it on the 360? No, probably not. But if you have a copy of it, either way, the game is pretty sick. Okay, that's it. Bye-bye.